Hello and welcome to Chinballs Gaming. I am Scop, and today I'm going to set up SSH on my Steam Deck with the aim of, well, remote development essentially. So I want to be able to develop on my main PC directly on the deck without having to plug any keyboard and mouse into my deck. I can just do it all remotely from the setup I normally have in my development environment with my nice big screens, my fast computer, and nice keyboard and everything. Don't want to be developing directly on the deck all the time with this crap mouse and crap keyboard I've got and tiny screen. So I'm going to show you how to do that. And first thing we need to do is set up sshd on our Steam Deck. So the first thing you're going to need to do is, firstly, drop into game mode and also have a keyboard and mouse plugged into your Steam Deck. Otherwise, you're going to have a very bad day. Very, very bad day. But we won't need it for long. At some point, we will be able to get rid of the keyboard and mouse completely and just develop remotely, which sounds so nice, doesn't it? It sounds so nice. So first thing, come to your menu and type in console and launch a console. So now you've got your console open. First thing we need to do is start the sshd services. And to do that, we are going to type in sudo system control enable and sshd. That's going to ask for a password, and we're going to type that in. If you've not got a password yet, what you need to do is you need to type in pass and then wd. And then that will set up a password for you for your deck user. I already have one, so I'm not going to do that. So that should now mean that SSH is now running. That we can check that by going sudo system control is active and sshd, and it's not active. So we need to we enabled it, but we didn't start it. Okay, so we need to start it as well. So we'll do that as well. Sudo system control start sshd. So that is now active, and if we look, it is enabled. It is also enabled. So for now, we can leave our deck like this, and I am going to go to my Windows machine. Ooh, Windows, oh no. And nobody likes Windows, do they? Apparently. So this is my Windows environment. This is Visual Studio Code with an Ubuntu subsystem. And what we are going to do now is we are going to connect to the deck via SSH in Ubuntu, which is running on Windows. We're going to do it this way first, then I'll show you how to do it in Windows as well. So if we type in SSH and then deck at Steam Deck, I am going to be using the host name of the Steam Deck, which is Steam Deck. You could use the IP address, but I have got two separate networks in my house, so I am just going to use the host name, so it'll just be a bit more universal. And then you can just log in with your password that you set up maybe earlier. But we don't want to be writing in passwords all the time. We're here to set up SSHD with some nice, fancy SSH keys. So we're going to need to generate some SSH keys, and let's just see where we are at the moment. We are in home scope, and I am going to change directories into my SSH. So we are now in our SSH folder. You don't have to do it here, but I just thought it'd be quicker to do it here. We're going to generate a new key specifically for our deck. You can have a shared key for all your things. I am going to set mine up individually. Some people like this, some people don't. But for my deck, I'm not going to worry about a passphrase. In other places where I want to connect, I do want a passphrase. I don't really care if someone gets onto my deck. If they've got my main PC, I've got better things to worry about. But things like my server, then I'm going to use a key with a passphrase on, because that is more important. That has actual data on. That is not games, and just random crap. My Steam Deck's not going to hold any valuable information, basically. So I don't really care whether it has a passphrase or not. So anyway, I'm going to stop waffling. So first thing, so now that we're in here, so let's just have a look. PWD, I'm in home scope SSH. Just to remind you that this is Ubuntu, not Windows yet. I'll show you that next. And we are going to type in SSH underscore keygen. Is it underscore or is it dash? It's dash keygen, sorry. Dash keygen. And I am going to call mine. I'm probably going against naming conventions here, but again, I'm not so bothered. We're going to call it ID underscore and deck. And I've not given it any special parameters, just ssh-keygen, and I'm calling the file ID underscore deck. I don't care about password, so we hit that twice, and that is now generated. So what we can do now is we can do ssh-copy ID. We then need to give it the actual file which we've just generated. In fact, I'm just going to do a LL and show you that we have actually generated these two files. You can't see my mouse pointer, but trust me then. We've generated these two files called iddeck and iddeckpub. And the public one is what we are going to send to our Steam Deck. So ssh-copy -i and then id_deck.pub, and we are going to connect to our deck via the normal method, which is deck@steamdeck, and that will ask us for our password. It may ask us to confirm the ID of the fingerprint of the computer. To say yes or look into it more if you really want to, if you really care. So let's just log in as normal. And there, that should now have copied our ID over to the Steam Deck. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to try login with what it says here, SSH deck at Steam Deck. And that is still asking us for a password. And the reason is, we are going to come back to our deck right now. So here we are back on our deck. If we just find out where we are, we're in home deck. So we're going to CD into SSH and do an LL. And let's just check our permissions. So this file authorized key has just been created when we ran SSH copy ID, and it has the permissions of 500. Let's just, which is correct. And if we go back one and do an LL and just check our SSH folder, where is our SSH folder? It's there at the bottom, and that has permissions of 700. The problem is that our deck user, if we look here, you can't really see that because of the horrible color scheme that Valve chose. But this is our deck folder. This is our deck user, and you can't really see it because of my silly setup. So, trust me when I say that this says deck, and our deck home folder has permissions of 707, which SSH really does not like. So we're going to need to change the permissions on our home folder for the deck user. So to do this, we need to type in chmod, and we are going to give it permissions of 700, which means we as the deck user can do everything and nobody else can do anything unless they're root. And we're going to do that to deck and click enter. Then we're going to switch back to our machine we're wanting to connect from, which for me is the Ubuntu in my Windows machine. And I am just going to cancel this, and we're going to try and connect again. It's still asking for a password. Right. Yeah. The reason it's still asking for a password is I need to tell it the ID file that I want to connect with, because I've not set it up my config yet. So if we type in -i, and then it's going to be ID_deck, then that will log us in without password, just using the SSH keys. Now I'm just going to exit that. Now typing that every time is going to be a bit of a pain in the bum, right? So what we need to do is we are going to create a config file. So here we are in our SSH folder in the user directory. So home, whatever your username is, and then .ssh. And we are going to make a file called config. And to do that, from here, I am going to just go touch and config. And then if we do an LL, you will see that I have made a config file right there. And I am going to just code this in Visual Studio Code. So config, and that will open this up in Visual Studio Code for me. You can also do this in Nano if you wished. So again, Nano config, and then that'll open Nano, and you can edit it that way. It's up to you, but I'm just going to do it in Visual Studio Code. And this is how I've got mine set up. So first is you need to say host, And the host deck, this is what you are going to type in every time you want to connect to it. So this could be anything you want. You could call it my deck or just deck, up to you. And the host name is Steam Deck, the user is deck, and your identity file is the one we just created, .ssh/id deck. And we are going to click save on this. And then if we come to our terminal here and type in ssh and just deck, that will automatically log us into our Steam Deck. No keys, no silly long strings that you are going to forget. So yeah, the choice is between having to write ssh-i id deck at Steam Deck, or now just nice and simply ssh and deck. It's the exact same things. So that is if you are running a Ubuntu subsystem on your Windows machine. If you want to do this directly in Windows from just a command prompt, and we are going to need this also to do our remote development from VS Code. So now you're going to need to open up a command prompt, which is simple enough, just the Windows key and cmd, and that will pop up a standard DOS-like command prompt. It's not DOS anymore, but it's almost DOS, isn't it? So let's just stick this here where you can see it. Basically, we're just going to do pretty much the same thing. And if we just do an LL, oh, it's not an L, sorry, the Windows. So we'll do a dir, which is the equivalent to an ls. And you'll see here there's a dir called .ssh, which is not the same one as we were just editing. So if we just cd into this .ssh and then do a dir, and in here we again are going to do ssh-keygen, and I am just going to call it the exact same thing. So id_deck, and I don't care about passphrase. And then we are going to again write a config file. So I'm just going to do this from Windows Explorer actually. So in here I am just going to click new and text file, and I am going to call that config, and I'm not going to give it an extension. So config, yes. And if I just edit that with, I'm just going to do this with Notepad, why not? And I am going to write almost the same thing as I did for my Ubuntu side of things, but this time it's going to be C, different slashes, C, user, Rob, basically where we are now, and dot SSH, and again slash id_deck, and save that. Users, save that. Try that again. SH deck, still doesn't like it. Permission denied. Ah, yes, because we need to add this file. So Windows does not have an SSH copy ID function, so we need to do this a slightly different way. What I'm going to do is, so from here I'm just going to go SCP, and I'm going to SCP my id_deck.pub, and we are going to copy that to my deck user, so deck at Steam Deck, and so squiggle slash, and I'm going to copy that just temporary to the root of my home directory. So if we look here, and I'll just do a quick LL, there should now be an id_deck.pub, and what I need to do from here to add that to my authorized keys is I'm going to do cat id deck, and we are going to do arrow and put that into ssh/authorized keys, right? And that should now have added that line to my authorized keys. And if we come back to Windows, I hope I'm not going too quickly through this. I feel like I've skipped a few things. Apologies if I have. Just send a message on the video, and I'll try and explain it better if I've not done a good job. Let's see, SSH and then deck. And again, we are now logged in, and I am logged in to a ZSH shell. What I'm going to do though is I want to delete that id.deck from my home directory. So I'm just going to rm id_deck and just make sure it's gone. It has indeed gone. So there we go. SSH is now set up from the Windows side of my computer and also the Ubuntu side of my computer. And they're connecting nicely with the SSH keys and with the config file. So while we're here, we're going to configure SSHD a little better, because at the moment we've left open password authentication and we should get rid of that. So what we need to do, I'm just going to do this from here in Windows actually. I'm going to do a nano, in fact no, I'm going to do, I'm going to cd into ext/ssh and then just do an ll, and we are going to nano sshd config, and in here we might be able to just comment a few things out. Let's see. So I'm just going to come down to here and I'm going to delete this password of and give that a no as well. No. And let's go further down. Is there anywhere else that I can just comment things out? Save me having to type it all in. We also want to disable root authentication just in case. I have no idea what the root password is on the Steam Deck. Even if it has one, or not, I don't know. Permit root looking and prohibit password. That's fine. I think that's fine actually. So I've only just, so the only things I've done is I've uncommented this line, permit root login, prohibit password, and I have also uncommented this and changed it to a no from yes, prohibit password authentication. Click save. I'm going to try that again. I'm going to do sudo first, sudo nano, and then you're going to need the password for your deck. Then do the same thing. Authentication, delete that. And what else did I want to uncomment? I wanted to uncomment this one. Password authentication, no. And then save, exit, and then I'm going to do a sudo system control, restart, and I'm going to restart SSHD, and then I'm just going to exit. So now I'm back into my Windows shell, and I'm going to try just doing SSH deck at steam deck. Oops, I didn't spell that right. SSH. Permission denied, because I'm trying to log in with a key. And let's see if we can SSH in as root. Again, permission denied. So that should be pretty safe now from password-based attacks anyways. But if I type in SSH and deck, then I am nicely logged in. No passwords required. No setting up identity files. It's all done. It's all done with our config. So that's from CMD. I'm back here in my Ubuntu subsystem. Again, SSH deck at Steam deck. Again, permission denied. And if I just do SSH deck, then again, I am logged in. Great. So the only person that can log in remotely into my Steam Deck is the user deck with the SSH keys, 2 SSH keys actually, for my Windows side of my machine and my Ubuntu side of the machine. Now, how to set up remote development. So in Visual Studio Code, the first thing you need to do is click the extensions button at the side and then search for SSH. And the first thing that should come up is remote SSH. And you will need to install this. I've already got it installed, but instead of saying disabled here, it would say enable. Click that and let it install and do things, and go to View Command Palette or Control-Shift-P. And here you need to then type in, well, it's already the first on my list, but you type in connect to host and that should have picked up the config file on your Windows side, so you should be able to just click on the first thing, which for me is deck. That will open a new window, and that's going to try and connect. It's going to ask you what type of server this is, and it is a Linux machine. If we click on Explorer, we should now be able to open a folder, and here we are, home deck. And for me, I've got all my code in repo, and let's just, for instance, try, we'll just look at some code in, say, this bit of script that I wrote, and just click enter. And that should ask us if we trust this place, and yes I do. And this is all code on my Steam Deck. And I can now do some remote development here, and then all the changes are automatically applied to my Steam Deck. But let's start off with something simple. Let's go back to our deck first. In fact, I'm going to show you the deck in desktop mode, not desktop mode. I'm going to show you the deck in game mode now. So here I am in game mode, and I have a little script already set up in game mode, which is just a simple one, which tells you who the logged in user is on the deck. So I wasn't sure who it was in game mode, so I thought I would write a script to tell you, and there it is running. And it says, I am user deck. And if I just go back to my Windows machine, and we have opened this file, let's go to File, Open File, which should again show me the URL, the URI of my Steam Deck, and this is not actually in here. Oops, that's not the right keyboard. And I am just going to quickly open this file called Who are you? Who? So this is the code for the thing we've just seen, which just says I am user and who am I. So I'm just going to quickly change this from an error box give it an info box, and I am user that. In fact, I'm going to put in, let's just type in hello Chinballs gaming, and click save. And if we go back to our Steam Deck now and run that exact same piece of code, click play. And there it now says, hello Chinballs Gaming, and the user, or the logged in user deck. So yes, that means I no longer need a keyboard and mouse in my Steam Deck to do any coding. I can just fire up my normal PC, turn on the deck, leave it in game mode, set my scripts to launch from game mode like I've done here, and just do all my editing in my normal dev environment, which is Visual Studio Code, with my nice keyboard, with my nice mouse, with my nice huge TVs, with my nice big monitors, so ultra-wide monitors, you know, ultra-wide master race, welcome. Rather than developing directly from the deck, all works wirelessly, just turn it on, leave it on the side, and I can do some remote development, including some game development if you really wish. I've only been doing scripting development on it so far. I might do some game development in the future. But yeah, that's it. That is Visual Studio Code set up using SSH and SSH keys and SSH config files, all to do remote development on my deck. I hope that wasn't so confusing as I've probably made it sound harder than it actually is. But that's it. Yes, so done. I've showed you how to enable sshd on your Steam Deck, how to generate SSH keys in both Windows and Ubuntu, or specifically in Ubuntu subsystem, but it should be the same with any version of Linux, basically. How to add those keys to your deck in both Windows, which doesn't have SSH copy ID, which most Linux distros should. Showed you how to configure SSH, create a SSH config file. Also, how to change the sshd config file to disallow password logins, so it only accepts for those SSH key files. And also, I've showed you how to do some remote development from your Visual Studio Code from Windows, and a little bit of light code there. And that's it, basically. I'm just waffling on now. Yeah, I hope that helped. Catch you next time, and let me know if you know an easier way to do any of that, or if that was, let me know if that was too hard or too easy. I never know with these things. Sometimes I think things are easy, and apparently they're hard. Like a simple SFTP script apparently is elite hacking these days. I don't know. Right. I'm gonna stop talking now. Bye.